Hello, hello. This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And today is our weekly roundup of stories. We do have a couple of interesting stories for you, and we'll get started on that in a moment. But in the meantime, I hope you're having a lovely day. I hope you've had a wonderful week. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you're watching on. They should show up here in our chat room, and we can talk directly. And we have a couple of stories today. I don't have a long list of stories, but I have a couple. The first one involves the musician Wendy Rule. And hello to Cassandra in the chat room. If you're not familiar with Wendy Rule, she is originally from Australia. She is a very well-known pagan musician, and she has just become an American citizen. And this was announced this morning on her page. So congratulations to Wendy. And welcome to American citizenhood. I suppose I should say U.S. citizenhood. And if for any person, adopting a new citizenry is a big deal. And of course, there are many people who have multiple citizenships, and that's not especially uncommon. But even so, adding a new one is always a big deal, and it takes a certain amount of work, and often a certain number of years. And so congratulations to Wendy. My second story from the week is actually from a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't done the weekly roundup for a couple of weeks, and so I've had this one sitting back, and it's about the subject of dark oxygen. And I don't know how many of you have heard the term dark oxygen, but it's kind of an important discovery, and it's brand new. It was discovered this year. And dark oxygen refers to oxygen that is produced, and hello to Mary Cavalcante in the chat room, in the depth of the ocean. It is produced by metal nodules in deep ocean areas below 13,000 feet, and it occurs by electrolysis, separating water into hydrogen and oxygen with an electrical current. This discovery was announced just quite recently. And the thing that is so important about it is that previous to this, it had always been assumed that oxygen, which we know is produced through photosynthesis, had waited until photosynthesis to be present in our environment in its own right. We now know that is not necessarily not necessarily so. And Mary says doesn't have the same chemical composition as oxygen. And yes, that is my understanding. And that they now believe that oxygen was present in our environment before photosynthesis, which changes how we have to think about the development of, for example, plant life, and ultimately oxygen-breathing life. It does not change the long battle between the different life forms, those who breathe oxygen and those who do not, but how oxygen became part of that equation is now something we have to think about. It totally changes most of our theories about the development of biological life on Earth, as well as where oxygen can come from. And it goes to show we still don't know everything in these situations. Nobody was expecting to find an electrical source of oxygen deep in the ocean. The way they found it was by measuring the oxygen content of water. And they found that in these certain deep sea area, this certain deep sea area, it not only was unusually high, but it grew for reasons they could not explain. And so they investigated, and this is what they found. And hello to Marcy in the chat room, and hello to Tom in the chat room. It's good to see you both. It is a fascinating thing. I don't know what ultimately all will be able to be said about it. But it certainly will change how we look at these things. And, you know, one of the things that I think is very important for us as spiritual people is to also remain cognizant of the findings of science. And hello to Reverend Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you. It does not seem to me that there needs to be a battle between religion and science. They often go very much hand in hand, depending on what you mean by religion. I won't say that I agree with every standard conclusion of the scientific world, and I've seen a lot of them change, but I don't inherently disagree with them either. And I find that for the most part, my spiritual beliefs go perfectly well with science. Now, Mary says, I'm going to look this up right after this. Curious mind, absolutely. And it's a fascinating story. And, you know, it really shows how much our understanding of the universe has grown since we permitted ourselves to start asking these questions, which is to say, in the twilight of the Christian epoch, and how much farther it still has to grow. Because, of course, during the reign of the Christian churches in Europe, you couldn't really ask these questions. If you remember Galileo, who pointed out that it's the Earth that revolves around the sun, ended up being imprisoned and tortured until he recanted that terrible heresy. And the Catholic Church did not finally admit that the Earth revolves around the sun until the last century. They insisted it was the other way around. And I think that part of what we need to be careful of in our spirituality is certainly being hidebound. We should not be hidebound. And I think we also need to bear in mind the difference between a spiritual understanding and a physical understanding of things. And hello to Arlene Hebert in the chat room. I hope you're having a lovely day, Arlene. I hope everyone is having a lovely day. Because whatever we know now, you know it's going to expand and change. And, when I was a child, Newtonian physics was absolutely the dominant point of view. And that has changed drastically during my lifetime, and undoubtedly will change in future lifetimes. And in understanding the world, we need to apply the same advice that, that Ed the Pagan once gave me about understanding the internet. Love your message, not your platform. And that is, to understand how things work, you must never become so attached to one understanding of how they work that you cannot expand your point of view. Because there are always going to be new things to discover, always going to be new things to adapt. And I've been talking a lot in recent weeks about leadership, and this is a very important point about leadership, about not having hidebound opinions and being willing to change and develop when it's necessary. One of the places I think that's very important is our external expression of our spirituality. I said years ago that ritual is only window dressing. Ritual is there to help us to focus our will and our manifestations, and also as an expression of our understanding of the universe. The way we do it is probably not going to be how people are doing it 100 years from now. There are certainly going to be some changes. I've seen changes in my lifetime. Why wouldn't there be changes afterwards? And we have to be willing to accept that unless we want to become hidebound like some other groups. Um, there's no point in doing a ritual that does not speak to the people who are performing. No point in doing a ritual in a language that you don't understand, um, or at least not generally. And I think that we have to be willing to evolve and change in that. How we put our organizations together, we have to be willing to evolve and change in that. We cannot look at, I was always taught that if you want to understand deity, look at nature. And what do we see in nature? We see constant evolution, constant change, constant cycles. And so naturally in our own lives, in our culture, we must expect to see the same things. And we must be willing to allow that change to take place. We must be willing to embrace change when it presents itself. And one of the subjects I frequently whine about are the much celebrated elders who are so upset that young people aren't listening to them. And one of the comments that I've made in the last few years is that, I haven't found any great problem in having younger people listen to me. As of a couple of years ago, I never felt more listened to than at present, and I'm still widely listened to. I see lots of other elder leaders who are widely listened to. And then I see a lot of elders complaining no one will listen to them. And what's the difference that you see in these individuals? Well, there are several. One of them is, are you trying to talk to those people who aren't listening to you? Or are you just expecting them to acclimate themselves to you? You have to find your audience where it's at. And, if you're sitting in your living room and expecting the whole world to come rushing to you, it's not going to. And that doesn't mean they're ignoring you. It means you're ignoring them by not going forth to meet them. Are you saying things they have any need to listen to? Or are you telling them what was true 30 years ago? This is not the world of 30 years ago. It's not the pagan community of 30 years ago either. And if you have not grown with it, well, you may have some things to say about history, but it's not going to be very relevant to now. You actually have to have your foot in the current world if you really want to be listened to. These are some of the things that often occur to me when talking about that subject. And you also have to respect the audience you're trying to reach. And, I find a lot of those elders who are upset they're not listened to don't respect the younger community in the first place. I've watched them for 40 years chase younger people away with sticks, for want of a better way to put it, and make constant bad-humored jokes at the expense of less experienced people, and now they wonder why those people don't listen to them. Well, you really didn't make yourself worth listening to. And Mary says, most people talk at you while you talk at us. Well, thank you, Mary. Talk to us. And, that is the thing. I try to talk to you. But a lot of people, they want to talk at you. And in their mind, their world 30 years ago was perfect. And any changes are an aberration of the system. They don't want to discuss it. They don't want they want to move everything back. And of course, no one's going to listen to that. Just for starters, you can't go back. You can never step in the same river twice. So if you are an elder and you feel younger people aren't listening to you, this is my advice to you. Go out, interact with that audience, treat them respectfully and talk with them, not at them, and you may find they're very willing to listen to you. But you have to be willing to talk to them rather than just lecture them. And certainly don't come at them from the point of view that you're right about everything and they're wrong about everything, because nobody's going to listen to that. I won't listen to that. They certainly won't listen to that. And it's not true. The pagan community of 40 years ago had lots of things wrong with it. Um, Many things right, but many things wrong. And this was true of the wider community as well, and any subculture you care to name. And it's true of every culture and subculture today. They all have things that are right about them and things that are wrong about them. And so the idea that it's some perfect template to be replicated is never true. Rather, there are good things in it that you can adapt. But all too often, what I see the the would-be elders talking about is how terrible it is that young people do things slightly differently than they did, or that they use different terms. Um, and hello to Froggy Mist in the chat room, who says, "What about family?" Well, I've spoken about that in the past, and it's kind of the same thing. You have to try to find your audience where they are, but with family, sometimes the best thing to do is just allow time to do its work. You go ahead and do the next right thing, be a good person, and in many cases, your family members will see that you're still a good person, you're still doing the right thing. And while that may or may not convince them of your way of thinking, it should help them to get over any fear of it. And a lot of times that happens. Sometimes it doesn't, depends on the family. Depends on what's actually motivating their negative reaction, because I'm assuming that's what we're talking about. Sometimes there's nothing you can do, and then you just have to kind of let it go. But what you cannot do is force the issue. If you make it a contest of will, you're almost always going to lose. If you say, you must agree with me, you must accept me right now, it's rarely going to be successful. Rather, if you say, I am who I am, I'm going to be who I am, and I hope that one day you'll accept me, chances are that may come to pass. Now, Arlene says, Oberon Zell is one that goes out in the world all the time. Well, yes, he does. He is a good example. Selena Fox is a good example. And there are certainly many others. Selena is a perfect example of an elder who I believe is widely listened to and widely influential, as she should be. But look at how she communicates with people. Always positive, always constructive. I've never heard her be dismissive or critical of younger generations. And if there's something that she feels needs to be addressed, she'll do it in the most constructive manner she finds. This is how you get listened to. I remember a few years ago, there was a huge controversy about the term baby witch. And so many elders were so upset and completely unwilling to take into account the fact that this was a self-descriptor that some people were using in an affectionate sense to simply describe the fact that they were new in the craft. And they made it into such an ugly competition that it didn't need to be. But that's how you get people not to listen to you. But now we're going to take just a moment for a message from our sponsor. Our sponsor, of course, for today is me, but we're going to hear from me anyway. And so let us hear from our sponsor. And there we go. And that is advertising my magic and metaphysical auctions that are going to be on Thursday nights at Gaia Thrift Central through whatnot.com. And I'm going to have all kinds of interesting things for you. Now, Froggy Mist goes on to say, she went and told my boyfriend's mom and said she wasn't going to be happy. I'm scared because I finally got comfortable around his mom. Well, if she's not happy, that's unfortunate. It's her problem too. You cannot live your life on everybody else being happy with you without ending up regretting it greatly. So hopefully your boyfriend's mom will be fine. And if not, just don't deal with the woman. There's no inherent reason you need to. And, there are people, I won't mention any names, but I can think of someone um, who is the mother-in-law of someone that I know well, who terrorizes her entire family through the tantrums she will shed if they do anything that isn't exactly as she thinks it should be. And what does she get for this? Well, one, they barely tolerate her. They pretend to feel much better about her than they really feel, and they mostly avoid her when they can. It is not a good outcome, in my opinion. And she doesn't know them. She knows only a false impression of who they really are and knows very little about their real lives. It's a sad place to put yourself in. So, not only would I say, if your boyfriend's mom chooses to be ugly about this, ignore her, cut her out of your life, but do not ever yourself um, follow that example. If people if people behave differently than you want them to behave, remember that's their life, and be compassionate and understanding toward them um, whenever possible. Now, I am a great believer in the paraphrase of the great author William Baldwin, that we can love each other and disagree as long as what we love each other, as long as what we disagree on is not my fundamental civil rights. Um, there are certain things that you can't just agree to disagree on. But to some extent, you can just hold the person at arm's length and not have to have an open disagreement with them in your private life. Arlene says, I have a sister-in-law like that. Well, yeah, and that's someone that you have no need to see, in my opinion. Because why would you want to see that person? So with that, I have one more thing to talk about today, which is kind of a news story from this week, in the sense that we are at the 1-year anniversary of the 2023 Ninth Convening of the Parliament of the World's Religions. And all week long, we've been bringing you photos and videos of that event. And this was a wonderful achievement for Corellian tradition and a wonderful memory. And those of you who were there, I want to thank you for coming out and being part of it and for all the things you did. Arlene Hebert, for example, did lots of interviews, and we'll be coming back to that in a moment. Mary Hawk did lots of interviews. We'll be coming back to that in a moment. Ed the Pagan did all kinds of things, and so many other people who either are in or might be in our chat room. And we're trying to just remind everyone what a wonderful time it was, and what a statement of strength from our tradition, now and going forward. So today, yesterday, we had a number of videos for you, including the Pagan Freedom Ritual and Tarot Thursday at the Parliament of the World's Religions, as well as interviews with the Reverend Sir Rolando Comon and Patricia Robin Woodruff. Today, we have an interview with Melanie Silver on the Order of the Library, with Winifred Rose Hodge, with Cosmo Rubiconis, and with Elder Lady Amber Dawn. And these are all fascinating interviews. Two of the interviews were done by Mary Hawk, two were done by Arlene Hebert, and one was done by Ed the Pagan. And I hope that you watch all of them. They'll be running on the hour through the afternoon, and then, of course, they'll be up indefinitely. And you can see some of the fascinating people who were at the Parliament of the World's Religions. Among those people, Winifred Rose Hodge is a a Troth author representing Germanic heathenry. Elder Lady Amber Dawn was there representing the Covenant of the Goddess, but is also very prominent in the Fellowship of Isis. Melanie Silver was representing the Order of the Library. All very fascinating things. Now, tomorrow, we will also have more videos for you, and those will include the regional lustration, which was enacted at the Parliament of the World's Religions. And hello to Steve in the chat room. Not the first regional lustration we've ever done at the Parliament, but the most recent. And it was notable, in my opinion, for its oracle. And that oracle was delivered by Ed the Pagan, who talked about the pain of the world. Or I should say the oracle spoke about the pain of the world, and it certainly spoke to some of the subsequent months that ensued, arguably are still ensuing in the world at large. And it's very interesting how accurate the oracles at lustrations can be, even if often after the fact, because sometimes at the time it's not clear what's about to happen, but it expresses itself as time goes forward. There's also tomorrow going to be an interview with Mary Malinsky, the Aquarian Archpriestess for Canada, and an interview with Oberon Zell, and an interview with Sahil Ahmed. So all of that will be fun. That will be continuing our coverage of Parliament tomorrow. And then on Sunday, we will have the last bits of our coverage with the Parliament, which will include an interview with Ed the Pagan himself, an interview with Ted Ursus, and the film Journey to the Parliament, which I think is very worth the watching. So I hope that you will take time to watch all of these and to remember what a great time we had last year, what a great thing we did last year. And, what a wonderful Corellian family we have, and what a good position we're in going forward. And, last year there were people who made the serious mistake of thinking we were not going to be around much longer. But, nobody ever won any money betting on that. And all this time later, here we are, still going strong, still resilient, still doing all the things we ever did. And those people look rather foolish now. There are even people out there saying, they don't exist anymore. Well, here we are. And anyone who tells you that, you're dealing with a fool. Because anyone who tells you that something doesn't exist that clearly exists is a fool. That was my outside voice, wasn't it? But this is, I think, a very important thing for us to be remembering. And there are so many other wonderful things for us to remember going forward, but more importantly, wonderful things for us to do. And the next big thing I'm aware of in the Corellian world will be the regional lustration on Labor Day weekend in Buffalo, New York, that I will be in attendance at. So if you're there, I will see you there. If you have any books you'd like to have signed, bring them out. And then there's also going to be a regional lustration here in Illinois at the turn of the following month that I will also be appearing at. And so both of those will be great fun, I'm sure. With that, I see that we have come to the end of our half hour. I hope you have enjoyed it. And I hope that you're enjoying our reminiscences about the Parliament. There'll also be lots more photos going up because there are more photos than you can shake a stick at. And for the most part, I'm putting up the best of them because I don't want to completely flood the airwaves. But I've been putting them up in several groups each day, and I hope that you're enjoying those too. And just seeing what a lovely time it was and what remarkable people were there. So now, let us take a moment to close out with our prayer as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to be with us and to guide us as we go forward and help us to always be open-minded in how we approach our lives, and to be open-minded and compassionate in talking with other people. Help us not to focus on when we don't feel listened to, but rather how to make ourselves listened to, how to reach the audiences that we hope to speak to, and to make ourselves understandable to them, to make ourselves desirable to them. Help us to always see ourselves not as victims of the world, but as active participants who can affect what we receive, and help us always to find the best ways to do that. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love. We know you are always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always. And I will be back with Midday with Rev